words that are beneficial to my own heart because I need a lot of preaching to inspiring to the hearts of the Vaishnavas and pleasing to the hearts and ears of Sri Sri Radha Muralidhar, Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu, and Varaha Nrsimhadev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll begin with the verse for today, and then I'll go to invocation prayers. Let me just share it. I'm allowed to share, right, Anand Bihari Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Be able to see?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So today's verse is the 8th verse of chapter 7 of canto number 11. Krishna is directly giving instructions to the great devotee Uddhava. Pumso ayuktasya nanartho brahmah sa guna dosha bhak karma akarma vikarmeti guna dosha dhiyo bida. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. One whose consciousness is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and performance of forbidden duties. Compulsory duties, karma, forbidden activities, vikarma. Purport. And this is a very long purport, so with your permission, I'm going to read only the highlighted pieces, but I'm not going to leave anything out because I prepared a little summary off to the side that I will discuss from, and then we'll leave time open for questions. Purport. The illusory mental platform of existence is described in this verse. So we had the word ayuktasya. It indicates the conditioned soul who does not fix his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we know from Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature that Lord Shri Krishna, the absolute truth, is within everything, and everything is within the Lord. And therefore, reading again from the yellow highlights, therefore, one who has developed love of God is constantly seeing the Lord everywhere, and not just the superficial material objects that cover our vision of the Lord. The word ayuktasya in this verse indicates one who has not come to the stage of reality. And what is that reality? That it's actually Krishna who's within everything, and everything is within Krishna. Such a person, being deprived of loving devotional service to Lord Shri Krishna, attempts to enjoy the innumerable forms and flavors of material experience. This temporary, illusory engagement is not the constitutional function of the bewildered living entity, who remains without any awareness of the ultimate reality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Within the world of matter, there are undoubtedly varieties, and we see this throughout. I mean, I'm looking out of the window and I see literally probably dozens, if not hundreds of varieties of trees, for example. And the examples are given about dogs and horses and human beings, of all kinds. In nature also, we find fertile land, sterile land, lush forests, useless deserts, and so on and so forth. So many varieties in the world of matter. However, we do not have any permanent relationship with any of these conditions because we are eternal spirit souls, part and parcel of Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic culture is arranged in such a way that everyone can become perfect in self-realization simply by performing his occupational duty for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'll carry on. Then there are people who argue, and this is again from the purport, Some conditioned souls believe I don't need to do anything for the satisfaction of Krishna. I can just do it by performing ordinary non-spiritual duties on behalf of my family, my nation, humanity. I'll open hospitals, dig wells for people in, dry conditions and so on. Others are interested neither in service to God nor noble mundane activities. We just have to open our eyes or open any news item, news media, and we can see people like this everywhere reported on. No service to God nor mundane noble activities. And there are others who actively pursue sinful life. New York City is a great example of that, but every single place on this planet is an example of people pursuing active sinful life. And then it's described what these kind of sinful people are. Actions in the mode of ignorance are called vikarma, as mentioned in this verse. The purport says, unfortunately, neither the materially responsible person, that is one who is performing duties for family, nation, etc., nor the materially irresponsible person, nor the sinful person can achieve the real perfection of life, Krishna consciousness. Although different societies and different individuals maintain different concepts of good and evil, all material things are ultimately useless in terms of our eternal self-interest, which is Krishna consciousness. At this point, I want to pause and ask a question. You can open unmute your microphone or just put it in the chat. Why does the purport say that ultimately, no matter what we do, including philanthropic activities, everything is ultimately useless if it's not done for the pleasure of Krishna, if it's material? Not a test, just rapid fire reflections.
Is anything material? Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Oh, go ahead, Mother.
Yeah.
Anything material is ultimately temporary and linked to the material energy, as opposed to being linked to Krishna, that is eternal and linked to the spiritual energy. So anything material is ultimately useless. It will go, as opposed to being linked to that which is our truest nature, Krishna.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Wonderful. Who else was going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in terms of three types of karma, there's karma, bad karma, good karma, and then just karma, which is no karma, or basically doing things with Krishna, for Krishna or for Krishna's sanction, that Krishna takes away any karma associated with it, and so that's back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And Krishna Daya Prabhu also put in the chat, it's going to entangle us further. Absolutely. Material things have a beginning and an end. They're constantly changing. And ultimately, it's a cycle that just entangles us. And it actually is given to us as a reflection of our own desire to not worship Krishna, to enjoy separately from Krishna, or to say, Krishna, I really don't care about you, or I'm sorry, but I don't really want to do anything for you. That's the sad reality. And Krishna is so kind, he reciprocates with the jiva's desire in this aspect as well. And he says, okay, I have the material energy that I've created, the material world. Feel free to enjoy or suffer as you want, because there are laws. Like any system, anywhere in the world, any institution always has laws. And so when we come to the material world, we are bound by the laws of the material world. So let's continue further. I'll share again. Okay, so I'll skip past some of these. It's a long purport because I do want to get to some discussion points and leave time open for questions and reflections. The function of Vedic literature is to engage each individual at the particular level on which he's presently situated and gradually elevate him to the perfection of life. The material mode of goodness is not itself spiritual, but it does not impede spiritual life. Since the material mode of goodness purifies one's consciousness and creates a hankering for higher knowledge, it's a favorable platform from which to pursue spiritual life, just as the airport is a favorable place from which to travel. I love this analogy that's about to come up, that's given by the disciples of His Divine Grace in this purport. If a man desires to travel from New York to London, the New York airport is certainly the most favorable place from which to travel. But if the man misses his plane, he is no closer to London than anyone in New York who did not go to the airport. In other words, the advantage of the airport is meaningful only if one catches his plane. Similarly, the material mode of goodness is the most favorable situation from which to move up to the spiritual platform. And then comes the really strong point. Therefore, if one does not come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, his elevation to the material mode of goodness is useless, just as a trip to the airport is useless for one who misses his plane. However, all such perception of good and bad in the material world is undoubtedly based upon the fundamental mistake of considering oneself and not the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be the ultimate doer or performer of all actions. So this, on the other hand, a person who knows that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the actual controller of material nature and that it is ultimately he who is moving everything, can free himself from the bondage of material existence. Such a person goes to the abode of the Lord. I'll go back to the translation. One whose consciousness is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. We distinguish between good and bad. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and performance of forbidden activities. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Chakshurunmiltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Jutam Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरु दीनतारिणम्. I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, by whose mercy even the dumb like me can speak eloquently and even the lame can cross mountains. Hare Krishna. So this verse and the purport are a little bit, if we think about it, quite stark and quite direct, are they not? And we saw in the beginning of this chapter, and we've heard this story. Let me just admit this person. Okay. Krishna begins his final instructions to Uddhava by directing him towards detachment and fixed remembrance, equal vision, practical spiritual intelligence. And this chapter will move from Krishna's imminent departure from our earthly vision to Uddhava's need for guidance. And then, through the Avaduta Brahman's famous teaching, through the 24 gurus found in nature and ordinary life. So in yesterday's verse, we read, and I'm just going to pull that up for a second. My dear Uddhava, the material universe that you perceive through your mind, speech, eyes, ears, and other senses is an illusory creation that one imagines to be real due to the influence of Maya. In fact, you should know that all of the objects of the material senses are temporary. And we know this from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, where Krishna says this material world, from the topmost planet down to the bottommost planet, is a place of misery, and it's temporary. It's not permanent. So this chapter has a lot of philosophical insights. In fact, this forms part of the Uddhav Gita that Krishna narrates. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna narrated only 700 verses because there wasn't a lot of time. There was a world war that was about to begin, and Arjuna needed some urgent instruction. So that wasn't the time to give a long philosophical discourse on Gita. So Krishna gave the most power-packed 700 verses to Arjuna. But with Uddhav, he had a lot more time and he gave a lot more details. And that's contained in this section in the 11th canto. So Krishna teaches Uddhava to see beyond temporary material circumstances, use human intelligence for self-realization, and learn detachment and devotion to Krishna in every circumstance. So now this verse, we learned or we read today that when consciousness is not connected with Krishna, with a desire to serve and please Krishna, the living being becomes confused by the apparent variety and hierarchy of material objects. I see this happening in my own life, and I see this all around me. Anytime you get absorbed in things, and again, I'm not advocating we should give up our work or family life. That's not the point. The point is that when we get super absorbed in doing something that in our mind and our consciousness, we are not consciously, intentionally connecting with service to the Supreme Lord, then we become bewildered. And we think, well, hang on, it's just this period. I'm like in a time crunch at work. And after these 5 days are over, I'm going to like get right back to it and I'll become, reconnected. And then have you noticed, this is a reflection point. Have you noticed that, Maya is expert at giving up the moment we think, okay, well, these 5 days are over and that crunch period is over. Let me just now go back to my devotional life with full consciousness or full focus. Maya serves up something else. It might be an obstacle. It might be enjoyment. It can be a, totally different variety. And before we know it, another 5 days have gone by, or sometimes years have gone by. And we wake up and we're like, wait, I'm an old man or an old woman now. What happened? I was like so busy and so engaged, and then I forgot. The other analogy that comes to mind is that of the phone. We pick up the phone saying, I just need to text Anand Bihari Prabhu about this one thing. He asked me about the class, or Amrita Kishori, yes, I'm going to be on and I'm going to be, on in the morning on time. Don't worry about it. And then another email comes in, and then another text comes in. And then we say, well, hang on, yesterday I put a comment on so-and-so's social media. Let me see if someone responded to it. Then you see that, and then a news item flashes up. And before you know it, you started at 7 p.m. thinking by 7 p.m. and 25 seconds, you'll be out of there. And it's 9 p.m. and you're still attached to the phone. That's an analogy to how the living entity becomes disconnected from the supreme truth, because Maya is expert at serving up constant, unending variety. There was a show that I saw several years ago, an English BBC show, in which one of the characters, he's a psychiatrist, and this was set in like the 1920s or 30s, and psychiatry was in its early days. And this psychiatrist, he tells the protagonist of that show The protagonist is looking at the room and marveling. Someone is drinking to excess, someone is eating to excess, someone has, company of the opposite gender to excess. And the psychiatrist says, well, my theory is that if we give more and more of what a particular person wants, ultimately he'll be turned off by it and disgusted, and he'll come back and he'll become normal. And sadly, we know from Shastra that that is not true. We keep going deeper and deeper. And so the main point in this verse is that the illusory mental platform is a very dangerous place to be in. When the mind is not fixed on Krishna, it becomes absorbed in the surface variety of matter, and it assigns value to those temporary conditions. And so in the purport, we saw that for love, we must seek the person. For service, we must seek the person and not merely the exterior. So one with love of God sees that, yes, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do in my material life, but Krishna is present here, or I'm using the fruits of my labor to serve Krishna in some way, to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtana mission. And so one sees the Lord within all things, and that avoids the danger of getting captivated by the external coverings of matter. The other thing is, as all of you are so expert in doing, is daily hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, and chanting our rounds, associating with devotees, serving. That keeps us connected to Krishna, keeps us connected to the teachings of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and keeps us safe rather than on that illusory material platform. So another thing that the purport talks about is that material variety is real as an experience, but it's not ultimate. So yes, there are differences in bodies, wealth, education, environments, pleasure, pain, victory, defeat, so on. The purport does not deny these relative distinctions, but it denies that these experiences define us, the eternal self, that is the Atma or the soul. And it denies that these experiences provide the final goal of life. And why is that? Because the living entity is an eternal spiritual being, and we are a part of Krishna. So our lasting self-interest, our lasting fulfillment is found in Krishna consciousness, not in chasing temporary arrangements of material good fortune or avoiding temporary distress. So relative duty, which is the duty of, to my family, to my community, to my nation, to the environment, and so on and so forth, is that useless? No. Vedic culture does give us occupational duties, varnashram dharma, so that we can become purified by working for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Duties are meant to elevate our consciousness, not become a replacement for bhakti. And so the purport talks about these three mistaken paths: the materially responsible, the materially irresponsible, and the sinful. None of these will give us fulfillment or perfection, by worldly morality or neglect or degradation of oneself. The path to perfection requires us to be intentional about serving Krishna. And then I love that analogy when we were talking about it. I was reading that airport analogy. I love that in the purport, that the mode of goodness is a favorable launching point. We don't deny or degrade the mode of goodness. We don't say, it's a material mode, I don't care about it. It's a launching point. It purifies the mind, it supports spiritual inquiry, but it's successful only when actually uses that mode of goodness to rise to the spiritual platform. And the analogy was that of the airport. And so the prescriptions and prohibitions that we are given, whether it's in Vedic tradition, the vast Vedic literature, which Srila Prabhupada boiled down into simple rules and regulations for bhakti, which are very applicable and relevant for us. When these prescriptions, prohibitions, and proscriptions, proscription is what we cannot do, right? Similar to prohibition. A lot of people, when they come to Krishna consciousness in the beginning, they're very fired up and they're like, yes, I'm going to embrace everything. But after some time, we've seen it happen, and we might see it happen in our own lives, from time to time that our inspiration takes a dip, or we get beaten down by the material modes, or we get too caught up. And then these prescriptions and prohibitions start seeming a little onerous. Like, really, couldn't Prabhupada have allowed us to do just this or just that? Or like, instead of chanting 16 rounds, can I just chant 1 round a day, or, chant when I feel like it? And the mind begins to chafe or, rebel against these prescriptions and prohibitions. um, I like to remind myself and remind people, whoever I talk with, about in this connection. There was a motivational speaker who I once heard at a corporate conference, and I loved the analogy that he gave. He started off by asking us, what is the purpose of brakes in a car? What is the purpose of brakes in a car? And people said all kinds of things, to stop, or, so that we don't get into an accident, um, and so that, we are safe, and so on. All these are good. But you know what is the purpose of brakes in a car, and what the real meaning behind it is? If we didn't have brakes, we would be terrified of either getting into the car, or we would go at 1 mile an hour, because we would not be able to stop that vehicle, that big piece of steel that we drive. So the purpose of brakes is to actually enable us to go fast. And when we think of it that way, suddenly the rules and regulations that Srila Prabhupada has given us seem to make so much sense, because we are like, yeah, that makes sense. That frees me up to focus on my Krishna consciousness. It actually enables me to go faster in my Krishna consciousness, rather than putting a brake on our enjoyment or putting, obstacles in our life. It actually helps us to clear those obstacles. And so I wanted to share that in this context, because this verse does talk about endless material varieties, and sometimes we can end up getting caught up in that. So I want to make a final philosophical point and then open it up for reflections, corrections, questions. The point is that material good ideas of good and bad rest on the mistaken belief that the living being is the ultimate doer and enjoyer. Our freedom comes when one understands that Krishna is the real controller, he's the real doer, and we move towards loving service unto him. So with that, I will pause and see if there's anyone who would like to speak or write something. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for such a wonderful class. This material world is so crazy, right? Are there, doing our rounds, attending Bhagavatam class, finding service, it really helps me stay on track, but it seems like this material world sucks you in so quickly. And, this past, I've been trying really hard to not be baseless fault finding. I'm just going to give this example and lead to my question. And, I just stopped like talking, right? I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to baselessly fault find. I'm not going to participate in that conversation. But then it just annoys people around me. They're like, why isn't Mike talking? Um, are there practical steps that we can take each and every day to keep us on the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness? That's my question. What
Thank
step do I take when I find someone on a different platform so I don't go down?
you. Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question, and it's very relevant, and it's something I have to battle with my own mind every single day, right? It's the mind that does this, isn't it? Because, the material variety is served up and allures so many people. But if we are firmly fixed on the path of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't bother us so much. And you identified correctly, all the different things that we can do, which is the daily practices of hearing, chanting, associating with devotees, and not fault finding. All of these are things that, unless one is very elevated from the very young age, and when I say young age, I don't necessarily mean in chronological age, but young age in Krishna consciousness in this life. Unless one is very advanced, these are things we have to battle with every day. It's not like I can say, or anyone can say, well, I've reached here, I'm now at a very elevated level, I never have to worry about it. And I'm going to, always progressing on this path. And to me, the secret is associating with devotees who have a genuine taste for hearing and chanting, genuine taste for service, and trying really hard, like not to, as you said, fault find, talk to our own mind, having friends in Krishna consciousness or a partner that one can confide in or who's actually one's, best friend or severest critic. That is also very helpful. And by friends, I don't mean just, people we come together with for kirtan or hearing Bhagavatam. That's wonderful because that's better than 99.999% of friendships in the world. But by friend, I mean someone who will take the time and the emotional energy to say, hey, you need to correct this aspect of your behavior. Or we can turn to them. They might not do this on their own, but we can turn to them and ask for frank feedback, and they can actually give you that feedback. Hope that helps.
That does. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any reflections on the endless varieties of, for example, material life that are served up and feeling, the feeling of like, I just need to do these two things and then I'll be okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, very profound subject matter, wonderful class and nice presentation. The idea that being in the airport and not getting on the plane seems to apply to us in the sense that we are being called to actually transform our life in a very deep and thorough way, to be devoted. Like it says, the brahmachari lives in the house of the spiritual master only for the sake of the spiritual master's mission. Now, of course, by Krishna's kindness upon us, no matter what our status or station in life, we can be doing something as an offering to Krishna. But there's a tendency to make ourselves comfortable in the airport rather than really think, okay, this is what I'm doing now, and how do I get to the point of a haitukiya pratiyata, unceasing, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna. And it just so happens I was listening to Prabhupada's class last night, and he was so strong. I wish I could just pull it up and let him speak. I'm praying to Krishna that I say what he wants to say right now. He was saying, Brahmana never accepts a position of being in the service of a materialistic company or organization or person. Never. This is very, very bad. Now, of course, there's exceptions to everything, but what Prabhupada was saying that, even in a desperate situation, you may turn to Kshatriya duty or Vaishya duty, but never, I know Bhakti Vikash Maharaj is very vehement about this, he will not offer a Brahmin initiation to anyone who has a job, as a salaried job, because it's like being in the airport without, you're thinking, I'm depending on this employer, he's paying me, and my boss tells me, don't bring that book here, don't speak about Krishna here, don't play that music here, don't put that picture up here. And you become the slave of a materialistic person or a materialistic company for 40 hours a week. Now, that may be a situation we may be in, but to be lingering in that situation and not to be strenuously praying to Krishna and endeavoring to move on to the point of being focused on the spiritual master's mission. Maybe I'm speaking too long, but my father had 9 brothers and a sister, and my mother's side of the family, 14 children, and the World War came. And all of them gave up their fancy, gave up their jobs, got on ships, went halfway around the world. It was a war-level effort. They felt that there was something really compelling, that we must address this, we cannot be idle. And so, like, Prabhupada is calling us, as far as I can understand, don't get stuck in the airport. Push on Lord Chaitanya's movement with every bit of your time, every ounce of your energy, every bit of your resources, Lakshmi, and get onto full-time devotional service. It seems like, we may be at a certain platform and we may be doing our best to please Krishna on that platform, but isn't it true that it's completely abominable to be stuck in a karmic job? Now that's
Well, thank you, Prabhu, for reflections. Many of us are, as you said, stuck in a karmic job. But quite a few of us that I know, including myself, are fortunate that we can openly speak about Krishna in our workplace and, bring music and, kirtan music and offer books and so on. I think the point really is of not getting distracted. And everything like the Brahmana, the Avadhuta Brahmana, extracts lessons from every single situation or entity that he's exposed to. He's exposed to, earth, and he's exposed to so many different things, and he can learn lessons from that. That's the point for us. Many of us who work in jobs, and there are many people on this call that I see on the Zoom call that work in jobs, can be internally fully engaged in service 24 hours a day. It's not so much about the external situation. There can be a brahmachari living in the temple who's actually, externally engaged in service a lot, but internally not really engaged. And ultimately, it's a matter of cultivating our inner life. And our inner life is cultivated by hearing and chanting, and especially by associating with devotees who have a taste for these matters, who are sincere. As I get older in my Krishna consciousness, and Radhika, my wife counsels me this all the time, it's cultivate sincerity. With sincerity, everything else comes. It's the sincerity that we are praying for, and we are constantly striving to better in our own lives. And we do that through these means that we have talked about. But thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else?
You're saying that there can be not mitigating circumstances, but what about if you're in the situation and you're not desiring, how can I move deeper into commitment to pushing on Lord Chaitanya's movement? If we have that desire and we are endeavoring like that, even if we're doing pretty good in the situation under the circumstances, if we have that desire, I believe that Krishna will open the door.
Yeah. So I think that desire is, the purport entirely talks about how Krishna is the doer. And when, it opens up a new point, an interesting point related to what you said. Krishna is the doer doesn't mean we just sit back and do nothing and we say, well, I'm in Prabhupada's movement. Prabhupada is, the greatest acharya, and he's Patita Pavana, uplifter of the poor and the fallen. So I'm poor and fallen. Let me just sit back, relax, and as they say in the airlines, enjoy the ride and not do anything. And that's not what it means when the purport says Krishna is the doer and Krishna is a controller. What that really means is Krishna reciprocates with every single living entity's internal desire. And cultivation of that desire is really what is crux to our Krishna consciousness. What was that story? And many of us might be familiar with that, of the Brahmana who lives in a building, and right opposite is the prostitute. And he sees the customers going in and out, and the prostitute doing her business. And all day he's focused on, oh my God, look how fallen this woman is. Look, my God, look at how fallen those men are who are going to see her. In the meantime, the prostitute is in this, horrible condition of life, and she's actually internally focused that by force of circumstance, I'm stuck in this horrible situation. How I wish I could serve Krishna. How I wish I could just be focused on Krishna. And at the end of life, the Brahmana comes back to the material world, and the prostitute goes to a place from where she can pursue her devotional life. And the Brahmana is asking, like, what happened? I am no Brahman. I was studying Vedas. And the answer given to him was, yes, but your absorption was not in Krishna. Your absorption was in fault finding and in what that prostitute was doing. And I think that's a very powerful lesson. I know we have a minute and a half before darshan. Sadhvi Devi has her hand up. Sadhvi?
Hare Krishna. I will just say quickly about the situation when it comes to desiring and so on. In my case, I can say from my experience, I desired very, very long time to know why I'm doing what I'm doing here, why I'm here, and so on and so on. It didn't happen before when I come well over 50 years old, when I got finally my Bhagavad Gita. So in my understanding, in my experience, is that even though that it takes time for our desire to come to flourishing, it's just don't give up. Just don't give up. Just continue, search, and stay with it. That's just what happened to me. And when it comes to mind, Krishna himself says, among the senses and the mind. So you want to win Krishna's, how to say, to win Krishna's love and seeing you is just to try to do the best you can. Chant, even though that your mind is all over, even though that you are thinking about other things, still continue chanting, because this chanting eventually will affect our mindset also. So this is my experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sadhvi Devi. That was such a profound reflection. I love that idea. No matter what, don't stop desiring to serve Krishna, to go deeper. And I think of the toddler, little toddlers, and Anand Bihari, your son is now older than a toddler, but it's very recent. Toddlers, they fall down all the time when they're learning to walk, right? But they don't stay down. There he is. Yeah. They don't stay down. They actually get up and walk again. They're determined not to stay down. And we should be like that toddler in our Krishna consciousness. We might get beaten down. We might lose inspiration from time to time, but we should never stay down. Our desire should always be, and our prayer, Krishna, please help me. You help the. I'm very. Please help me.
He might even get a karmic job.
Hare Krishna. So I think I see the temple room ready for darshan. Is that correct?
The temple room is ready for darshan, but there's nobody in the temple who can put the equipment on. And this phone is dying. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Just do what you can. Do what you can, Adipusha.
I see. Is that Vasudev Prabhu? Jai.
He doesn't know how to turn that on. Maybe he knows. Baba? He asked him? Oh, well. I may get a few minutes out of this. Oh, there's...
Jai Krishna Murlidhar Bhagwan ki jai, Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu ki jai, Varanasi Bhagwan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah, that was the last breath of Adi's phone. Thank you, Adi Purusha Prabhu, for doing what you can under the circumstances. There was a story in the Bible, I forget the guy's name. He was demonically possessed, and then Jesus came across this man and chased the demons out of his body. And then the man got fired up and he said, Jesus, I want to join your traveling party. I want to join full time. I want to abandon everything, my work, my family, my friends. I want to join you, Jesus, full time. And Jesus told him, chill, slow down, stay where you're at. And he told him, tell your work, tell your family, tell your friends how Lord has had mercy on you. So he didn't travel. Prabhupada didn't.
I think Ananda Bihari froze, or is that
Okay,
just...
so it wasn't just my phone.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
you froze.
Travel the
we're
way
all
you
waiting
Froze.
for...
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
There we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Where did I cut off?
Yeah, so I think Anand Bihari Prabhu, it's wonderful story. When we read Chaitanya Charitamrita and we read about Lord Chaitanya's travels to South India, story after story, it starts with the Kurma Brahmin, but there are so many stories that are in there that people, when they see the Lord, they chant and dance with him. Obviously, who would not want to go with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he's going from place to place? They're all like, yeah, we want to give up everything and we want to travel with you. And what is Mahaprabhu's response? Mahaprabhu is saying, no, stay where you are. Go back, do your duties, take care of your families, do your work, chant Hare Krishna, and tell everyone about Krishna. Tell everyone about the instructions of Krishna, right? He says that that's famous verse. And so therefore, it's very applicable to modern life. It's not, most of us are not able to like renounce everything and move into the temple or, go to the Himalayas or whatever it is. We have to have means of maintenance. And the trick or the key point is, how do we stay connected internally, not just externally? We can be doing so many services, but it can be like the husk of rice or the husk of wheat, and we may not have any internal consciousness of like wanting to please Krishna, wanting to please the devotees, but we do it because that's our role, and maybe we are expected to do it, or we've done it for so many years, and now it'll be embarrassing if we suddenly stop and people find out how empty we really are inside, right? So it's really about cultivating the internal much more than cultivating the external. So I know Sadhvi had her hand up, and then Sundari Radha after that.
Yes, I also want to mention, even though I have 6 children and they work in different places, in hospital, for police, and so on and so on. So it's karmic job, but I also have, I don't know if I can say, manipulate them to use their money in a better way. Sometimes when it's Radhyatra, for instance, I tell them donate money to the temple. So there's something we do it on the phone that we can donate. So they donate, and sometimes they buy for me books. So the books is for learning about Krishna and so on. So that's way I get them to do it, even though their work is karmic. But I believe everyone who's working in karmic, the amount is not important. The important is you think that this I give it for Krishna. Doesn't matter if it's $5 or if it's $5,000. Just to donate it with that mindset. This is important. The mindset, what you're doing in your mindset, is very, very important. That's what I try to teach my students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a point that I remember from one teacher who Sri Radhika and I really look up to, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Swami. He's my god brother. He talks about how our service in Lord Chaitanya's mission is to build the sukriti of people, even those who are even sinful people. Sometimes on Harinam, we see even like the most degraded people, they have a beer in their hands and they're chanting and dancing. We see with the Harinam Ruchi boys and with Mahavishnu Swami or Ram Roy Prabhu and all those people. These people come and dance. that's their first step of Sukriti. They're building the Sukriti up so that at some point, maybe in this life, maybe in some future life, they will come to the point of saying, wow, what is this thing? Like, is this relevant to me? Who am I? Is there a God? What is my relationship with him or her? And that's when the whole inquiries begin. So our job is to build up Sukriti. We can't force people into bhakti. We can't force ourselves into bhakti either. We'll rebel and we'll go away, right? So it has to be an organic process and it's an inspiration-driven process. So I'll thank you for that point. Sundari Radha Devi and then Nityananda Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for class. Yeah, I agree too. And I think that everything you were saying before the prostitute and everything, I was like, yes, that's what I was going to say. How are we supposed to bring Krishna consciousness to every town and village unless we go into these situations that, just like Srila Prabhupada, right? He didn't just stay in the temple. He didn't just stay in his comfortable place. And even like I made the example the other day of being at the PTO meeting and bringing a bunch of fruit, prashad, and now everybody's eating it. So I can't see a physical result happening, but it's all Krishna's mercy and Krishna's plan. So by doing that, and it's realistic, like we have to, especially in Kali, like we have all these random jobs, but if we act in such a way where we bring Krishna into it, that's where it is. And even one of my friends who's been in the movement since the early 90s said when I told her, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do the PTO anymore. It's a lot of time. She's like, no, you should do it. You should. You should bring prashad and you should do. And I really took that to heart and I did. And that's what I do now. Thank you for class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, we all can do a little. And frankly, when everyone does a little, the sum of the total is beautiful and it's vast, right? So we can't just say, well, those 10 people are doing it and I'll just observe, or I'll donate, which is good. We should donate money to the Sankirtana mission, but we should also do some service, whether it's going out on Harinam or book distribution, even once in a while, taking prasad to our workplaces or exposing people to the message of Krishna some way or the other. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Nityananda Chandra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hari.
So you have this kind of there's a tension between principle and pragmatism. This is we have a nectar instruction. There's a verse that expresses that tension as well. And we always want to be optimal in both. Like we want to be optimal in our preaching, and we also want to be optimal in our principles. And so both of these have relevance, even though they can pull us in different directions.
Right.
And so there's a nice story of our lecture. Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and he was talking about his godbrother from the Nabi family. This is a very wealthy family, but it started with one dead rat. I think the class is called Dead Rat Business. And he said that one of the ancestors of the family, he was approached his friend, said, "Hey, I need some capital. I want to start a business, and I was thinking if you could, give me some money, and we can start a business. I can start a business." And his friend said, "You're a Vaishya. There's money everywhere. You see that rat? That is money." And what happened was that at that time there was the plague, and the government was giving 2 annas, a very insignificant amount of money, for anyone who brought the rat off the street, brought it to the municipal office. And so he brought the rat off the street, and then he traded that. He got his 2 annas, and he traded that for 2 like old betel nuts, and he washed it up, and he resold it for 4 annas, and he built his business. And so then Prabhupada was saying that the Brahmana, he has full faith. He has full faith that if I simply do what I'm supposed to do, then God will give me whatever I need and deserve. He said the Vaishya has less faith, or the Kshatriya has less faith, the Vaishya has even less faith, and the Sudra has no faith. He has to have the boss. And so Prabhupada said even when he was young, all the Vaishyas, they would go out and they would sell dal in the morning and kerosene in the evening.
Mm.
And he said, this kind of, he basically many times pushed devotees to have businesses, be in an independent situation where you're free to serve. But that's like a principle he was also, you could say even more so pushing, like just do whatever is practical and just spread the holy name. So there's this tension is there that you have these Brahminical principles of having independence, and we don't want to just neglect that. But then there's the pragmatism. So this is like you have religion, you have philosophy, you have deontology, you have consequentialism, you have principle, you have practical, you have sensitive, sensible. It's this tension that is there, and we want to see how we can please Krishna by optimizing as much as we can on all these different tensions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That is such a key point you made. In every religious tradition, definitely in our society, right? There's a danger. I mean, there's a tension between liberal and conservative. Those who want to preserve the orthodoxy. Prabhupada said, and he never, we should never change a single word, even in application of what he said. And then there are the people who say yes. But Prabhupada himself was the ultimate experimenter, and therefore, he was experimenting himself. He was changing what the previous acharyas had given. And of course, he's an acharya, so he's free to do that. We are not acharyas. But there's always this tension. And my realization is, as much as it is uncomfortable to listen to an opposing point of view, we must listen for our own sake, for our own growth. And that tension is essential so that society can move forward. It's not always easy. It has to be resolved. And, we see that even in temple ceremonies, right? Our head pujari might have a certain way of like approaching it, and might say, well, let's do it this way. And someone else who has a different opinion might say, no, let's do the abhishek another way. And there's tension right there. But tension is a sign of, especially when it's healthy tension, not, when people are fighting each other or they want, to destroy each other. That's terrible, especially in bhakti. But healthy tension actually resolves things and brings us all to a higher platform, especially when we are ready to accept that an opposing point of view might actually be better than the point of view I hold. So thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, thank you very much, Yasoda Dulal Prabhu, for the discussion. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to the discussion, to the yagya. I think we're ready for Sage and Sky, Annabelle and Isaiah.
Yeah. Jai Shila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna.
Okay, Annabelle, Isaiah, Sage and Sky, please chant loudly.
One, two, three.
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much. Junior Choir Chanters Ki Jai.
Thank you very much for today, Hare Krishna.
Yasoda Dulal Prabhu, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, all the Parampara, Ki Jai. Happy Monday, we love you and we need you every day. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Anand Bihari Prabhu. Nitai Gaur Bhakta.